What's up guys, this is Chris here, and today we're going to be talking about pistol caliber carbines, specifically why you would get one. Today I've got 10 reasons to do just that. 10 reasons why you would want a pistol caliber carbine. Pretty good. Now PCCs certainly have their pros and cons, so we're going to go over a couple of both today, but for the majority we're going to be talking about the positives. Before we get in this video, I want to mention my Patreon supporters. Thank you guys very much. It's because of you guys we have all the cool stuff on the channel we do. We try to make our reviews for you and not the industry, and if you're into that, go down to the description and sign up. Also in that description is a link to a local shelter named Iowa. It's the YSS. Those kids could use your help, so please go down there and donate to those kids. That being said, let's get right into the first one. The ammunition is cheaper. At least most of the time for most situations. 9mm is usually running about half the cost of 5.56 or 223, and in some cases even a quarter the cost of something like a 6 ARC, 6 Creedmoor, 6.5 Creedmoor, or a 308. So it can be a lot cheaper than your standard rifle round, which is nice if you want to get a lot of training in. Now number two, you're going to get less penetration than larger rifle calibers as well. Now you say that could be a bad thing, for sure, and for sure it could be, don't get me wrong. You're going to get less range, you're going to get less power traditionally, but you're going to get less penetration, which can also be a good thing in certain situations. Now I know certain pistol rounds like FMJ certainly penetrate as much or even more than 5.56 simply because they fragment when they hit drywall, that kind of thing, but that really depends on your round selection. If you're using hollow points or if you're using defensive style 9mm ammo and then you hit your intended target, which is mostly of water, it generally slows the projectile down so much that it doesn't penetrate through drywall or plywood as much as something like a 308 or a 12 gauge, for example. So it can be a better tool to use in an apartment, and it can be a better tool to use in a highly crowded area if you still want a long gun for self-defense. The advantages of a long gun obviously is that they're easier to shoot than a handgun, which is number 3. 9mm PCCs are obviously easier to shoot than a handgun. I've never seen anyone shoot a rifle worse than a handgun, and that's simply because of the ability to control the weapon. First off, you can control recoil a lot more, so you can generally shoot faster. Because you have two hands on the gun, one here and one here, you also have more points of contact with your shoulder on the stock, your hand on the pistol grip, your front hand on the fore end, and then your face right in front of the optic, making it not only easier to control under recoil, but obviously much steadier and easier to shoot accurately, which is super important because above all else, shot placement matters. Using a bigger caliber doesn't necessarily void you the responsibility of hitting your target where you need to hit it. Now going along with that, you're also going to have way less blast, and that is probably going to be great for you if you're using this rifle in a small space. If you use a 9mm rifle as opposed to a 5.56 and you light a few off inside a small structure, you will find basically everybody will be deaf with the 5.56 and the blast will be so crazy that it's like throwing flashbangs. And I think in a lot of times that's exacerbated by shorter barrels with brakes. That being said, 9 is always going to be quieter and it's always going to have less blast inside structures, allowing you to keep your hearing for certain tactical situations. That's very important, but mainly what I think of is kids and other people in the house. If you start lighting off a 5.56 right next to Timmy's room, he's going to have a hard time hearing, so keep that in mind. If you want to get even quieter, the next one is the guns are more suppressible. Now, that is pretty important for a lot of people with suppressors because we like to get it movie quiet, or at least quiet enough to be hearing safe. And for the most part, 5.56, especially like 16-inch barrels and under, they're not exactly hearing safe with most suppressors, and that's because anything that breaks the sound barrier when it goes off generally has quite a crack, and it makes it a lot louder and a lot more difficult on your ears. Enter the 147 grain 9mm, which often regular 147 grain is subsonic, but you can certainly find lots of very reliable subsonic loads in the 9mm and especially in the 45. 45 pistol caliber carbines really shine here because almost all of them are subsonic. And if you can get 223 subsonic, you can get 308 subsonic, but they're not exactly very reliable considering they're way underpowered by comparison to their counterparts, which can give them reliability issues and all sorts of other problems. So I would recommend that if you're looking for a very quiet, no ear protection rifle, I would definitely go 9mm or 45 ACP. The guns are also generally lighter. So if you're a smaller statured person, let's say my wife is 5'2", it's easier to handle a 5-pound rifle than it is, let's say, an 8-pound rifle. So if you're looking at something like the SIG MCX Spear in 5.56, which is one of the rifles that the military just adopted, you're looking at a 7.5 pound to even 8 pound configured 5.56 rifle, which isn't overly heavy, but for holding it up for a long period of time, if you're a smaller statured person, maybe your child, for example, your 13 or 14-year-old wants to go out and shoot, or worst case scenario, they have to use it in home defense, it's going to be a little unwieldy, where you can get into a 3.5 pound X-Star EP9, for example, or you can get into a 5 pound MP5, JP5, CMMG, Banshee, or CZ Scorpion. All those are going to be sub 6 pounds, and they're going to be very light and easier to maneuver. Along with that, the guns are generally going to be shorter, at least until the new pistol brace regulations, because 9mm doesn't need quite as much barrel length to be effective as certain rifle calibers like the popular 5.56. Now you can fix that with 300 Blackout, but 300 Blackout is always going to be more expensive than 9mm. 300 Blackout is also an answer to the suppressible rifle, which I mentioned earlier. If you're looking to get a very quiet rifle that you can then switch to a high-powered rifle if you want to go from subsonic to supersonic, 300 Blackout is a great way, but it's sometimes 2, 3, or even 4 times as expensive as a 9mm, and if you're just plinking around, it makes no difference. They take handgun magazines you probably already have. That's the kind of the running joke in the comment section of every YouTuber is, does it take Glock mags? But honestly, that's a concern for a lot of people. Glock magazines not only used in the most popular pistols in the entire world, but they're super available, super cheap, and they're generally pretty reliable. And you can get a pistol caliber carbine that not only matches the caliber of your handgun, so you can store just one ammo if you want, but you can also get it in the same magazine type, so you can just buy 20 or 30 of those magazines and use them in your rifle and pistol. Now, not only is that good on your pocketbook, but it's actually good for your repetitions as well, because you get used to holding just one magazine. Now, that's one of the common attributes that a lot of people from the Old West knew. It was very common to have a lever gun in the same caliber as your revolver. That way you can have one ammunition belt and you don't have to worry about mixing up ammunition. Now, like I said, it's nice in the pocketbook, it's nice for training issues, and it's good to have just one type of ammo, but do remember, with the PCC, you are going to be sacrificing a lot of power by comparison to a 5.56, a 308, or a 6.5. Many of the rifles are also very cheap. You can get into a super high quality 9mm pistol caliber carbine or 45 for the sub $1,000 mark, and it's a little bit more difficult generally to get into the higher calibers, especially like 308 or 6.5 Creedmoor. You can get into an X-Star EP9 for $300, it's very impressive, but you can also get the Scorpion, you can get the Banshee, you can get the new Springfield, and you can get several other pretty amazing pistol caliber carbines, including the Freedom Ordnance and so many others I can't think of at the moment, for well under $1,000, having a bomb-proof, reliable platform that not only looks very intimidating, but is very useful and effective in close range engagements. Many of them fold. Now, I know that's kind of a weird thing to think about, but in the modern day 2023 era where the pistol brace thing is still an issue, I don't know why it is, but it still is, they're finding new ways to try to make pistol caliber carbines shorter and smaller, because obviously they're a very light platform that has very low recoil by comparison to a lot of larger calibers, so they're able to do a lot of unique things with them. And recently the Smith & Wesson FPC was released, and it is a fantastic 9mm PCC that is also under $1,000, forgot to mention that one. But it folds in half, making it half the size of a standard gun, so you can store in a bag or you can keep it on you in situations where you might not a full-size rifle. But that's certainly not the only one. The Kel-Tec Sub 2000 has been doing that for the last decade or so. The pivot gun, and there are many others now that are coming up with unique ways to be a smaller, more compact platform that you can carry on you again when you need it and have it ready so you can fold it out and use it for whatever you're going to use it for. I don't know, you have it underneath a boat and you're gun fishing for all I know. But well, whatever you're using it for, folding is fun. One of the biggest selling points, they're easy and fun to shoot.
Woo, I love this thing.
First off, 9mm generally has very low recoil. Now some of them can actually have more recoil than a 5.56, but certainly not a 308, 6 arc, or 6.5, or 6mm, or any of those calibers, or a 7.62 x 39. The 9mm is always going to be less recoil than that, and if you get a good system in your PCC, if you pay a little extra to get a delayed system in the MP5, the JP5, or maybe a piston system like the MPX, you're going to experience very little recoil, if none at all, and you're still going to have all the advantages of the cheap ammo and obviously less blast. Now, less blast applies to a home defense scenario, which I was talking about earlier, but it also applies to a range visit, especially on an indoor range. A lot of indoor ranges don't allow rifle calibers, and you can still get the same training, set up the gun the same way, and go to an indoor range with a 9mm PCC and get all the training you need and not blow the fucking doors off the neighbor sitting right next to you in the bay next to you with a 5.56 AR that's 11.5 inches with a fucking 3-chamber break on it. Don't do it. It's mean. And 10, I kind of alluded to it, but they are an amazing training tool. I would consider the 22 caliber, 22 long rifle caliber rifle to be the absolute training tool when it comes to a defensive rifle. However, 9 is what I've been going to more lately, and I'll tell you why. First up, I have a lot of steel targets, and you can shoot 9mm within 10 yards of a steel target generally and not deal with any blowback. However, a 5.56 in a full metal jacket, you generally have to be up to 50 yards away, so you can shoot steel up close and have a lot of fun, and you never have to keep pasting targets up. Obviously, with your 9mm caliber rifle, you can set it up the exact same way you could the 5.56, put the light in the same spot, the foregrip, use the same optic, use the same stock, and you can get all the same training. But what I would consider a 9 to be better at than a 22 long rifle is it does induce recoil. You can use an airsoft gun or a simulator for your pistol, and it gives you a little bit of recoil. You can use a 22, which gives you a little more, but you can still shoot ammunition that's half or 1/3 the cost with a 9 and still simulate the same amount of recoil. So not only can you work on accuracy, target transitions, but you get to work on recoil control as well, and you get to do that on steel, up close, have a lot of fun, and do it for a lower cost than the 5.56, which is honestly really nice. And again, as I mentioned, if you live in a city or something like that and you are restricted to indoor ranges, you can't go to an outdoor range, I would definitely recommend a 9mm PCC simply because a lot of ranges you can't, again, use rifles, but mainly it's because of the people around you. In an indoor range, let's say with 3 or 4 bays, it is very, very obnoxious to be next to somebody with a break on a 5.56 or especially a 7.62 x 51. So overall, I think there's a lot of advantages to especially the 9mm PCC, but definitely the 45 as well. And I didn't talk much about the 10mm, which is getting more popular. Basically, the 10mm has similar advantages, but they are a little bit more in the middle of a 9 and a 5.56, not only in cost, but blast and recoil as well. I would consider 10mm not to be as ballistically effective as 5.56 in a similar price, so I don't get into them too much myself, but if you like that, they're certainly effective. Rounds on target is rounds on target. At the end of the day, it's just fun until it's not. And make sure to have the right equipment, have the right training, and be prepared for any situation, and have fun while you're doing it. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. If you want to see more like this, let me know in the comment section below. I think I should have a best PCCs out for the money in the next couple of weeks, so if you're interested in that, make sure to subscribe. Please support Oklahoma shelters, and remember to recycle. I'll check you later.